The wind was cold that night, the kind of cold that slipped through thin clothes and settled deep into the bones. Streetlights flickered weakly along the empty road, casting long shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement like silent witnesses to suffering. Under one of those dim lights sat a young woman and her small daughter on a worn wooden bench at a bus stop that no buses visited anymore. The woman's name was Lena. Her face was pale, tired, and marked by faint bruises she had tried to hide beneath her hair. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped her thin coat tighter around her daughter. The little girl, Maya, was only 6 years old. Her stomach had been growling for hours. But children, even when hungry, often notice something more painful than their own hunger. They notice their mother's sadness. Maya leaned against Lena's side and looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Mommy." Lena forced a soft smile. "Yes, sweetheart." The little girl hesitated. Her tiny fingers played with the torn sleeve of her sweater. Then she asked the question that would shatter Lena's heart into 1,000 pieces. "Mommy, if we eat today, will we starve tomorrow?" Lena froze. For a moment the world seemed to stop. Cars passed somewhere far away, the wind rustled the leaves, but Lena heard none of it. All she heard were those words. Words no 6-year-old should ever have to ask. Her throat tightened. Before she could answer, Maya whispered another question, her voice trembling slightly. "And if we go back home, he'll hit you again, right?" The silence that followed was heavy. Painful. Unbearable. Lena quickly pulled her daughter into her arms, hugging her tightly as if she could shield her from every cruel thing in the world. "No," Lena whispered softly, fighting back tears. "No one will ever hurt us again." But inside, Lena wasn't sure if that promise was true. Because the truth was, they had nowhere to go. Just 12 hours earlier, Lena had still been inside the small apartment she shared with her husband. To outsiders, it looked like an ordinary life. A normal family. But behind closed doors, that apartment was a place of fear. A place where love had been replaced by anger. And where silence had become survival. Lena's husband, Victor, hadn't always been like this. When they first met, he had been charming, confident, and protective. He brought flowers. He opened doors. He promised Lena a beautiful future. For a while, Lena believed him. But slowly, almost invisibly, things began to change. First came the yelling. Then the insults. Then the nights when Victor would come home drunk and blame Lena for everything wrong in his life. The first time he hit her, he cried afterward. He said he was sorry. He said it would never happen again. But it did. Again. And again. And again. Lena stayed for one reason. Maya. She kept hoping Victor would change. She kept believing things might get better. But tonight everything finally broke. Victor had come home angry. The kind of angry that filled the room like a storm. He started shouting about money. About bills. About problems that somehow always became Lena's fault. Maya had been sitting quietly at the table drawing a picture. When Victor slammed his fist against the wall, she jumped in fear. "Stop scaring her," Lena had said. Victor turned toward her slowly. And Lena immediately knew she had made a mistake. "You think I'm the problem?" he growled. His eyes were cold. Dangerous. Before Lena could step back, his hand struck her face. The sound echoed through the small apartment. Maya screamed. That scream changed everything. Victor froze. But Lena didn't wait. Something inside her snapped. A protective instinct stronger than fear. She grabbed Maya's hand, rushed to the bedroom, and stuffed a few clothes into a small backpack. Victor was still shouting in the living room, but Lena didn't listen. Her heart pounded as she grabbed Maya's coat. "We're leaving," she whispered. "Right now." They slipped out the door and ran down the dark hallway. Lena didn't stop running until they reached the street. And now, hours later, they sat on that lonely bench under the flickering streetlight. With no plan, no money, and nowhere to go. Maya leaned against her mother's shoulder. "Mommy, I'm hungry." The words were soft, but they cut deep. Lena checked her pocket. $2. That was all she had. She looked across the street and noticed a small convenience store still open. The glowing sign in the window felt like a tiny miracle. "Stay here for a minute," Lena said gently. But Maya grabbed her hand tightly. "I don't want to be alone." Lena's heart melted. "Okay," she said. "Come with me." They walked slowly across the quiet road. Inside the store, the bright lights felt almost blinding after the darkness outside. Lena searched the shelves carefully. $2. What could that buy? Finally, she picked up a small loaf of bread. At the counter, the tired cashier barely looked at them. Lena handed over the money. Back outside, she sat on the bench again and tore the bread in half. She handed the bigger piece to Maya. "Here you go." Maya took a bite. Her eyes lit up slightly. Then she did something that made Lena's chest ache.